Okay, good morning, everybody. This is Cassidy Ellis, Local Governments Program Manager here at SPEAR. Thank you so much for joining us for our June City Efficiency Leadership Council webinar. Today, we're going to be talking about maximizing efficiency through building operation. This is a topic that SPEAR has been involved with for a long time. It's very important to us and the work that we do. It crosses a lot of our program areas. So very glad to have this conversation today and glad you can all join us. So for any new faces today, as I usually start with a little bit of a primer of what CELC is, we're a education and outreach program of the State Energy Conservation Office. And we have developed a collaborative network of Texas cities, school districts, and other public entities engaged around conversations and resource exchange around energy management best practices and increasingly other topics related to and adjacent to energy management. We historically have hosted in-person regional roundtable luncheons. Those are, of course, web-based at the moment, but looking forward to getting back to in-person meetings soon. Monthly webinars, and then we develop a number of educational resources as part of the work and network that we have with cities around the state. If you're interested in getting more involved, please reach out to me. I will send a follow-up email after this webinar with details about the program and my contact information. A few announcements. We don't have too many announcements today, but next week we are co-hosting another webinar on applying ASHRAE's COVID-19 guidelines to buildings, to existing facilities. So in the follow-up email, there will be a registration link for that webinar, and that's a week from today at this time. SPEAR is also hosting our annual member workshop and conference in September 17th and 18th. We are going to have a virtual component and all attendees can participate virtually while also having some manner of in-person, kind of depending on where we are in September. So that event is free for public sector staff, and the charge for private sector representatives is pretty affordable. So check that out, and it should be a good couple days. Certificates, continuing education unit certificates will be mailed out automatically after this webinar. For anyone who's coming from the code side, these aren't the ICC certificates. These are general CEU certificates for anyone who self-reports hours for certifications and licenses. If you have any other comments or announcements, please use the chat box at the bottom of your screen. That's also where we would encourage you to put in questions for our speaker or for me, and really hoping to have a conversation and a dialogue today. One kind of primer plug here, as Bob is going to cover a number of areas around building operations and optimizing building operations, I want to remind the audience that SPEAR does offer the Building Operator Certification Program as one of our educational opportunities. It is a certification for building operators, as it describes. We typically offer one organization a full class worth of training, but we're moving that onto an online platform now, and hopefully we'll have a little bit more flexibility with offering. So if you're interested in learning more about BOC, please reach out to me or other SPEAR contacts that will be in follow-up email. Okay, so now we'll transition over to our speaker today. Bob Lane is with E3 Entegral Solutions. He's the regional manager for Central Texas and primarily works with cities and counties. E3 has been a valued member of SPEAR for many years and a great partner of SPEAR's, and we're very happy to have Bob join us today to share his insights and his experience. So I am going to be the one controlling the slides. So I'm going to switch over to Bob's presentation. Oh, actually, let me just make sure I did that right. Share computer sound. This is important. And then Bob, if you want to go ahead and jump right in and start introducing yourself. Oops.
Hi, everybody. I'm Bob Lane. I'm with E3 Entegral Solutions. I'm the business development manager for city county market in Central Texas. And I have been in the industry, HVAC and refrigeration, since 1970. I am a licensed mechanical contractor, and I take a lot of pride in working with building owners and managers and reducing their operating costs. And I've been doing that for a very long time, and I look forward to having a conversation with you guys today. And next slide, Cassie. As that little animation shows you, something I'm very comfortable with, and I've witnessed and I've seen. Typically, we throw a lot of money at our building problems as they occur. And normally we do it on an emergency basis, and our finance team really loves to hear from us every time something breaks down, we need more money. So that's what I want to discuss with you today is how can we best plan to make some changes. And one of the largest costs of the building operation is the cost of ownership. The building needs to be operated in accordance with the design intent. And that's one of your largest costs. So one of the things, do you utilize a proactive scheduled maintenance? And by that, I mean, do you have a routine required maintenance? Do you have a way to inspect that required maintenance and see to it that it's done? Do you utilize an outside vendor, or do you do it in-house? And do you have a computerized scheduled maintenance format? They've got some really good ones on the market today that can create work orders. Your team can complete the work orders, post it back online, and it gives you an automatic method of tracking and guaranteeing that the maintenance has been done. However, I have found a lot of customers or potential customers still use that wonderful fix on fail. And by that, I'm talking about when the unit breaks, that's when you're going to spend money on it. And before that, you don't ever invest anything in it. And I highly recommend that you do some type of scheduled maintenance, and you can plan for any costs of the systems. You can proactively replace parts that are failing. You can make sure that you've got clean filters, clean coils, doing everything you can to give your mechanical systems a chance to operate at the efficiency level that you anticipated. And one of the big things in our industry today, is your staff factory trained? Is your staff certified? And Cassidy was talking about their certification program. I highly recommend that your people need to be in some type of training, because today's equipment, just about across the board, they all have electronics and they self-diagnose. And like there's a AC unit that you can no longer put a set of gauges on. Well, from an old guy like me to go out and find a unit that you couldn't put gauges on, I was very lost. But you walk up to the unit, open the panel, it has self-diagnostic module. It tells you what the temperatures and pressures are. It tells you if it has a problem and tells you where to go to repair or fix that problem. But if you haven't been to a factory training, you would not necessarily know what that scheduled sequence of events can be. And if you start pushing buttons, you can fry some very expensive electronic parts and components. And when's the last time your maintenance staff attended any type of training? And today it's a very competitive market. I was in a previous life interviewing a young man to come work on our chiller team. And I asked him when the last time he had been trained on the chiller, water-cooled chillers. And he told me in the 1990s. And I told him he couldn't work on today's equipment because it's not even, it's just similar in the fact that it has a barrel and it uses water. But what I'm seeing is that every one of us throughout the industry, we need to come up with a certified training platform so we can have a skill set that we're anticipating. We can give our employees a career path, and we can have a retention plan. I was talking to a young man about coming into the HVAC industry, and he said, Bob, I got two choices. In July, I can be on a roof at 120 degrees, or I can be inside the building working on a laptop in air-conditioned comfort. That's what I'm talking about. So we've got to face that head on and deal with the reality. Next slide, Cassie. I'd like to talk about facility objectives. Like I said, I've been in the industry for a long time, and I really enjoy the fact that a building really is a living entity. And we put all kind of component parts in that building. And when they all work together, it's a fabulous event. And I tip my hat to people that manage these facilities and keep them operating. You know, right now, do you have operating problems in your building? Most of us do. Do the emergency repairs bother you? Having units down, does that bother you? If you have an entire building down, do you lose revenue? Do you have comfort conditions? Do you ever get clients complaining about the temperature? Are your server rooms too hot? Are your electrical rooms too hot? Those heat sinks impact the comfort level of the rest of the building. Would you like to improve your system reliability? Would you like to reduce breakdowns? Would you like for it to operate as it was designed? You can do these objectives. Would you like to extend your equipment life? Planned maintenance, scheduled maintenance will keep equipment in original equipment manufacturer standards, and nowadays, even in code compliance, and it can achieve your life cycle goals. Conserve energy. That's a biggie in everybody's plate nowadays. Most facilities have been given mandates to reduce their energy spend. Do you have a mandate? Are you in charge of it? Who is responsible for that mandate? Do you have a plan? Could somebody help you develop a plan? Would you like to reduce emergencies? And again, I've been involved where we've had to move people around in facilities due to mechanical breakdowns. Who pays for that cost? Is that a budgeted cost? It's not. It falls into that emergency category again. Another good one to have a conversation about, does your facility satisfy your business requirements? Does it work with your new plans, your new staff? Will your facility accommodate the growth projections? Do you have any planned investments for your facility? And these are discussions you need to have with your entire staff, including your facility staff, your maintenance staff. Do you need a new roof? Do you need new HVAC? Do you need a new boiler? Do you need lighting? How are you going to pay for it? How are you going to accomplish that? You can work with the design team and implement a plan. Everyone wins when the owner gets their objectives, and you don't have to eat that elephant in just one bite. And one of the things that I find most often, people do run reports on their building. You know, does your building operate near the average of other buildings like yours? So in other words, do you know where you are in that operation? Do you know how it compares? Have you done a benchmark to set a baseline, like an Energy Star, Department of Energy format? They have, it's a free platform, and it tells you how you rate. It also allows you to implement a plan and measure that plan. So if you don't know where you are, how are you going to know when you get where you want to be? So I'm very suggestive of doing some type of benchmarking to understand where your building stacks up. Next slide. On average, your commercial building owners will spend about 22% of their total operating costs on power and water. And that's typically the second largest line item on a building's operation costs. The fixed cost is your number one. And what you measure, you can manage. Power and water are variable costs. They're not fixed and can be adjusted over time with a plan that is implemented and reviewed. Again, benchmarking utility spend is a step forward to managing your cost of operations. Make a plan, work the plan. The benefit of knowing where you are in your facility and where you need to be is worth it. Next slide. On your energy costs, in a typical building, 40% of your utility costs traditionally, according to ASHRAE, is your HVAC. According to EPA, 35% is lighting. 15% is your building automation systems. And 10% are your other plug loads. Now the 15% on building automation, that's what I find in most buildings when I do energy surveys and audits. Most of the programmable thermostats are set on hold temp, usually at 72 degrees. And that's for 24 hours a day, 365 days out of the year. Even in the sophisticated building automation systems, in reviewing their set points, I find the same. They'll have in their programming hold temp. And what this chart's saying is when that is the typical operation, that's 15% of your utility spend. Next slide. The largest energy use in a building, again, is your HVAC, heating, ventilating, air conditioning. And it can account for at least 40% of a typical building's energy use. Your building automation system, again, can be around 15%. There's a new thing on the street now called smart thermostats, and they can operate in a less complicated HVAC format. And they can also be programmed together and give you a building automation system and a smaller HVAC setup. Again, your preventive maintenance, and I stress this a lot, your preventive maintenance can prevent cost of repairs. And by, again, mentioned it earlier, when you replace the capacitor, you replace the motor, you replace the drive before it fails, it does not end up in an expensive repair bill for you on an emergency basis. It is a planned expense. And again, the least expensive filter is the one you never install. And a friend of mine and I went through a building that had gotten its LEED certification. And part of that certification is a certain MERV filter. And we went into one mechanical room, and those MERV filters were not there. So the owner had gotten the LEED certification, but reverted back to the least expensive filter he could buy. So you don't win when you do that, because your maintenance costs are going to go up, your energy costs are going to go up, and the wonderful accomplishment of having a LEED building will not be a continuing item. And your maintenance solution is much easier to maintain at smaller bites, smaller costs than it is for always having to do capital. And that's a big part of your operating cost of your facility. And to me, it's your largest cost is your maintenance of it. So when you plan that, you're going to reduce the emergency need for capital solutions all the time. And I promise you, your finance team is going to like you a lot more. Next slide. Now, the current item in just about every building, every discussion is lighting retrofit. What about LED? Well, the EPA says that it's about 35% or over a third of your energy spend is spent on lighting. LED upgrades and integration with building automation system will greatly reduce that number. And the least expensive kilowatt is the one you never use. And what's pictured there are some replacement tubes, LED tubes. And the technology has changed over the decades. And the use of tubes with no ballast can lower your cost to upgrade your LED. You get better lighting where you want it. With doing a replacement tube, you reuse your existing fixture, and that's going to save you investment dollars on your LED upgrade. You will also find in some instances longer warranties on the tubes. Some manufacturers are offering up to 20 years. What's that mean for you? Well, it's a lower maintenance cost, lower utility cost, and you even have a lower technician cost because you no longer need an electrician to replace a bulb. And today's LED fixtures are integrated. They're a lot like the HVAC systems. They have a lot of component parts in them. And when you replace that fixture, in the future, you'll have to replace that fixture again. So your cost for future replacement, your cost of ownership for future, if you're doing new fixtures, can be higher. Next slide. LowTech Solutions. Some of these have very short return on investments. Some of them are as little as 2 years and 2 years and under. One that comes to mind I've used, the window film, it will limit the UV penetration, and it can keep the radiant heat from coming into the space. But it also has a glare reduction, and it can prevent premature carpet, flooring, furniture, art fading out. So you actually can save some money on your fixtures in your building as well by using the window film. I've also used it a lot in heat sink areas where you have a corner and a lobby where you have sunlight coming in from two different directions, and the sunlight builds up into a heat sink, and it's very hard for your AC system to handle that. Well, window film can help you reduce that heat sink buildup. And in some cases, the window film can even extend the life of your windows by improving the stability of the glass. Okay, and the other one is upgrading your building insulation. It's simple. If you keep the external heat loss or heat gain from coming into your building, you don't have to pay to condition it. So the better the insulation in your building, the less your cost for comfort will be. And some real low-hanging fruit on some conservation items. Put some drives on your motors and shut them down. Turn your lights off. Even your plug load, computers, they pull power. You can turn them off. And then by simply tightening up the building can make a world of difference. By that, I'm talking about weatherizing doors and windows. Then everybody talks about commissioning nowadays. Well, retro commissioning is going into an existing facility and putting it back into the state it was in the day you built it. So it should operate, and that's, to me, it's one of the first things you want to do is put it back the way it's supposed to be, the way the original engineer designed it, the way the original designer and owners had agreed upon. And then you can discuss improvements from that point. And then one thing that is developing today is the ceramic coatings. And I've seen them on in the Houston market, in the Savannah, Georgia market, the Florida market, where you've got high salt content. The coatings for the HVAC coils protect the coil, but they also give you a benefit of a better heat exchange. And they have one now, a coating for rooftop unit cabinets. And not only will it extend the life of the unit physically, but it also rejects the heat from coming into that cabinet, which allows your unit to operate at a lower discharge temperature into the building. So you actually save money on your air conditioning load because you're not having external heat in the AC unit itself. Next slide, Cassie.
The system was over 30 years old. It was costing us a lot of money to have repairs, and it wasn't providing a good temperature, an even temperature throughout the building. So sometimes students would be struggling in one room, they'd be hot, sweaty, next room they'd be freezing cold. The savings we would get would actually pay for itself over the course of a few years. So let's improve the lighting as well. It made good sense to do it all at the same time.
From a maintenance standpoint, with the limited number of employees, we will probably not have to do any light work for the next 20 years, more than maybe changing a bulb. There's no more ballast, no more flickering bulbs.
We went in not really having any predetermined idea of who we wanted to do the job. We just knew we needed it. It was kind of a no-brainer for us. What drove us to want to go with E3 is it was a one-call, one-stop solution. They were designing it, and they were making sure it was installed right. The board was comfortable with them, and it was a very easy process.
The biggest challenge E3 had was to have air conditioner by the start of school this year, which they exceeded. We had to have everything buttoned up within about a week, and they jumped through hoops to make sure we were ready to start school.
I think the most important thing that we liked about it was that they communicated regularly, not just with me as the superintendent and director of operations, but they communicated daily with the principal who was responsible for the building. Very early on, E3 brought in their engineer, met with us, asked us questions, walked our facilities, and we felt really good knowing the engineer knew us, we knew him, and his design obviously has worked out great.
So what that slide is about was a satisfied customer of E3, and those are some high-tech solutions that we do. We do HVAC upgrades, building automation upgrades, lighting upgrades, and we work with the facility owners, and we deal with outside air requirements. There's a way now that you can actually put devices on your HVAC systems that don't require as much outside air, so that's an energy savings as well. The lifecycle costs, attended a couple of seminars recently, and some people are promoting doing a total lifecycle cost up front in your building. The lifecycle cost I want to talk about here is about doing upgrades to an existing building. And what I'm talking about, we measure the cost of the building infrastructure improvements over time. So in other words, if you have something that lasts 20 years, then we're going to measure that over 20 years. And we're going to compare the cost to improve an element of your building against the cost savings over that same time period. I mean, the cost of an upgrade over its lifetime offers an advantage over the operational cost it will save. It's considered a good idea, a good ROI. And there's a lot that goes into that building operational costs. You have facility management and determining the feasibility of upgrades or retrofits. There's a lot that goes into it. Your facility management team needs to be involved. Your engineering team needs to be involved. The ownership team needs to be involved. And a lot of the usage of your facility needs to be implemented and talked about before you make any type of changes. The right change, however, will make a large impact, again, on the variable portion of the building operational costs. And if the savings exceed the capital cost, then it really should be considered. And one of the key questions, how long do you plan to use your facility? Is it a 30-year time, 70-year time? How long do you expect your mechanical systems to last? How long do you expect your lighting to last? Your plumbing, your boiler, your water heater, etc. Ongoing costs are up to 85% of the total cost of ownership. So it's a big decision that everybody has to make, but it is a variable cost. You can impact, you have fixed costs you can't do anything about. That's your property tax, your insurance, your mortgage payments. But your operating costs, you can impact. You can make decisions that can reduce that cost, and it does reduce the cost of ownership. If you can extend the expected life of your mechanical equipment, of your lighting, of your boiler, of your water system, does that impact your cost of operation? Yes. If you put in newer equipment that has a longer life cycle, is that something that should be considered? Yes. Next slide. At E3, we know you want to be a good steward of time and money. To do that, we need a proven way to make your building comfortable and efficient. The problem is you might lack the technical and financial resources, which can be frustrating and overwhelming. We believe you deserve the necessary tools to get your job done and done well. We understand how difficult this can be, which is why E3 has been hired by over 250 clients. We've evaluated existing buildings. We've identified and developed technical and financial solutions to improve them. We assist with project approval and implementation. So let's co-author a plan to address your buildings and conduct a no-cost analysis and identify solutions so you can proactively address deficient facilities even with limited resources. Let's work together to improve your facilities, lower your operating costs, and best serve your communities. And as you can see, we do a holistic approach. And we are a design build contractor, and we work hand in hand with the building owners, the building managers, and the building facility team. And we do have owner input into whatever type of project and solution would best benefit your needs. Next slide. And I'm nervous today, so I zipped through it. Apologize for that. Again, I'm Bob Lane. I am a business development manager. I thank you for your time, and I would welcome any kind of questions and would like to have a discussion.
Great, thank you, Bob. That was a lot of good information, very interesting. So just a reminder to everyone on the call, please use the chat box to put in any questions you might have for Bob, any feedback, any thoughts. And while you're kind of getting your questions put together, Bob, I'm wondering, in your experience, what would you say going into an existing facility that, has decent equipment, has all the retrofits already in place? What do you think the number one reason is that buildings aren't meeting their performance expectations?
Usually what I've found, Cassidy, is that they have altered or changed something in the operation of the mechanical systems, or actually sometimes it's the use of the facility itself. Something could have changed. They could have more people in their office. They could have less people in their building. But most times it's somebody gets in a hurry and they'll go into correct cooling call, and they'll set it in the whole temperature and they forget about it. And they don't go and really investigate what happens, just not by intent. But through the days, through the weeks, and through the months, then the building gets completely out of kilter.
Absolutely. Well, and that actually leads to our next question very seamlessly. Could you explain again the retro commissioning process? And also, just for the audience benefit, retro commissioning goes by a number of other names. It might be recommissioning or continuous commissioning, but retro commissioning is often used.
Well, the retro commissioning is in a existing facility. And what we do there, the team goes in and we look at the original design, original set points, and we make sure that if the thermostat is calling for a valve to move, that valve actually moves, that it responds to the input, whether that's an air valve or a water valve. So those are the type of things that we do. And once we get the entire building back functioning to the way it was originally designed, then it's back up and operational. And it can be monitored and it can be tracked, and everybody has input.
Great. Yeah. So it's basically just making sure you're getting your building back to where it was supposed to be, so that you can, make sure you're on the right foot when you start your upgrades and renovations. So yeah, got some good questions coming in. Can you speak a little bit more to the magnitude of savings that you get from window tinting? Were the schools more interested in the energy savings or the school safety aspects of window tinting?
Usually it's going to be more of the school safety, but I'm not in the school market, so I'm not the best one to answer that question. But the information that I have about the window tinting, there can be a true security benefit to certain levels of tint that are put on the windows. So that's one issue. The only ones that I'm familiar with, you can save. I hate to put a percentage on it, but you can save your ROI on a window tint job traditionally is in 2 to 3 years. So it's going to put you into and it's not a real capital intense investment. And the comfort level, and you want to look at all factors. You want to look at, do you have faded carpet? Do you have faded furniture? Is it impacting your artwork? Is it impacting your paint in certain part of your facility? So it can impact all of that. But again, you're probably looking, true savings, I don't know, probably in the low percentage of actual HVAC total savings. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I sounds like it did. Eddie, feel free to add more if you need more clarification. All right, Steve, I'm going to try and let you talk. So you're unmuted now. Are you able to speak?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, there you are.
Okay, because I was busy typing away because I didn't know if this was going to happen. Bob, would you have any recommendations for job descriptions of facility managers who understand preventive and predictive maintenance, can develop maintenance plans, and do these things that you so wonderfully articulated, to counter these idiotic trends that you also wonderfully articulated? We need to hire people like that. Okay.
Well, I think the title is important, but I think you need something in the realm of a facility director, director of facilities, director of operations, along that level. It needs to be, in my opinion, this person should be on the executive committee of management of that facility. Should be at all the meetings and have an input.
Well, I hear that, but I think our directors want to hire somebody then that could do that for them while they just kind of direct. You know what I'm saying? So
Well, don't we
a
all?
new director is going to be, you know, probably untenable.
So what specific certifications or experience would you look for if you're looking for a facility manager that's going to not just kind of do business as usual, but actually be able and willing to operate the building?
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm trying to ask.
Optimally.
Thank you.
Sure.
Well, I think Spear's certification program would be a good one to start with your whole team. But there are other certification programs out there, and they've changed through the years. There's a gentleman on the chat named Tom Easley, and if Tom could address that, he's very familiar with that, having the title for operations director. And he was not one that had to go do the work himself at the end, but he did in the beginning. He worked his way up. And that's why I talk about a career path. I think where I found a lot of people in the maintenance side got lost is when they went into the finance team. They go in and say, I need a compressor, I need a motor. They didn't convert it to their language. They didn't talk about money. And that's the biggest downfall in communicating within a building is the maintenance staff, no matter what their title is, needs to be able to talk to the finance team in the finance team's language.
I just saw, sorry. Go ahead, Bob. I just saw a case study, this is from the private sector, of Kohl's department stores. They had an analyst position from their finance team open, and they actually entrenched that analyst into their facilities team so that there was a person with finance from the finance team involved in all of the facility decision making, and apparently that was highly successful for that organization. Steve, CELC has done a little bit of that with some other cities, so I'll follow up with you online and see if I can get you some job description information, and then other folks on the call, if you have any recommendations, feel free to send those to me, and I'll make sure that they get that to Steve. Another question, other than Energy Star or LEED, do you know of any other credible green building standards certifications used to guide good decisions in commercial or residential spaces? Thank you.
You know, Cass, that'd be a question more for you guys. The Energy Star is the beginning of every certification I've ever been familiar with. And to me, it's pretty low hanging fruit. The green energy, the LEED building is a pretty good program, and it does absolutely reduce your cost of operation. And a lot of people talk about the expense, but there is a definite ROI to taking your building through the Energy Star format, and then on to even to just a LEED. But the green energy performer is pretty strong.
Yeah, so Jed, I happen to have been I was a LEED consultant, green building consultant for the first part of my career. And, I think I'm a healthy skeptic of LEED. I think it's a really great tool to guide overall decision-making because it offers kind of the holistic range of ways that not only energy, but also sustainability and water and site selection can be incorporated into the design decision making. But that said, you know, I think some of the common concerns with it are that it is just a design and construction certification, and it doesn't extend into operations unless you go into the EBOM world, existing buildings world. There are a number of measures in it that soft costs and documentation costs end up outweighing the sustainability benefit in some of those decisions. So, you know, I think that there are some challenges with it. One of our other attendees mentions Green Globes. That's another certification program. From what I understand, Green Globes is a little more industry aligned, so there can be some concerns with the motivations behind the certification system. Austin is fortunate enough to operate our own green building certification program, Austin Energy Green Building, which is similar to LEED. And then there is the International Green Construction Code, IGCC, which is, you're going to see a lot of similar strategies to LEED in that. I generally agree, if you're coming from an energy perspective, Energy Star is going to be your best and most aligned with actual energy use and control. So I want to make sure we get to all the questions. So I'm going to keep going here. Bob, do you have any recommendations for reducing demand charges? I think, and that's, Nick, I'd assume you mean demand charges in both operations, low-hanging fruit, and high-tech solutions across the board.
Well, there's a lot of the utility companies will work with building owners to use your backup generator for a specified period of time. So many, you know, ahead of frequency you agree upon, the number of hours and the maximum opportunity for those hours to be on your backup generator, and they will pay you to go off the grid. So that's the ones that I'm familiar with, and I have worked with building owners with pretty substantial payments from the utility provider to have that ability to turn your building off. And we're the ones that have been, to me, the low-hanging fruit. City and county buildings, most of them are closing at the prime operating hours of the grid. So the utility company will pay you to shut it down an hour sooner. And normally you won't notice a difference in comfort in your building. You get a pretty substantial investment into your reimbursement into your operation funds.
So you're talking about kind of scheduling and pre-cooling for those peak demand periods so that you can kind of lower and ride through the peak demand hours.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because usually they're going to want you to be off their grid in the 4 to 5 o'clock hour, and if you're in city county environment, you're pretty much wrapping up the day. Those times of the day, and the use of your building is going to be greatly reduced. So it's a good opportunity to work with a utility provider to do some reduction in demand.
What would you say some of the most effective equipment changes are for demand control? Like, is that chiller replacement? Is it, where have you seen the greatest reduction in demand from a retrofit perspective?
Basically, Cassidy, if your equipment's 20 years old, a standard efficient unit today is going to be multiples more efficient than what you had. And you can actually go further up, even in the chiller market, and as well as the HVAC rooftop market, split system market. They have inverter technologies now, and the compressors will chase the load up and down from 0 to 100% all day long. And it's amazing, you do not operate your facility at peak load all day. But a lot of the older units, the only speed they have is wide open. So that's why the retrofit is a very, an energy retrofit on the mechanical side can be, it's a big capital item, but there's also a lot of energy costs that you can save because of the new technologies.
Yeah, and would you say that HVAC load is predominantly what is driving demand?
Absolutely.
Question, how does E3 ensure that they do not install control systems that are beyond the technical expertise and capabilities of those who will maintain control systems after the project is completed? And
Well,
I think
we have a
not,
control, E3 has a controls division. We have people that's all they work on. We are a design build energy conservation contractor, and what that means is we work with the owner, the customer, with their facility, and we design with them a system that the owner feels that they can incorporate into their operation and that their people can be trained to operate. And then after a project, we stay in touch to make sure that what we told them would happen in their building actually does happen.
and is that the case even if, in your design build relationships?
Yes.
Yeah, because in a performance contract circumstance, of course, there would be a guarantee and a measurement verification process involved. Right. What training do you provide or do you recommend for these facilities staff who are going to be using new equipment?
What trainings?
Yeah, is there, you mentioned factory training. Are there any other training programs in particular that, or training approaches that you think work well to make sure that existing facilities staff will know how to use their new control systems?
Yeah, there's a lot of training going on with the tech schools. Those are a good source. The factories offer good training and certification programs. And then there's associations. Texas Air Conditioning Contractors Association's one, the Mechanical Contractors Association's one. In the bigger cities, if you use labor unions, they have a very good journeyman training programs, and they have a very good graduate success. So, but the ones that I have had the most success with, Cassidy, I've hired a lot of people out of tech schools, but the ones that I've had the most success with have had 2 years of basic college and 2 years of tech school. They go through a 4-year program.
That might actually be getting to Steve's question earlier.
Yeah,
associate degree in tech school.
Yeah, and that 4-year program brings you a very successful employee and a very successful person in our marketplace. They're very well versed and they're just good people to have on your team.
Yeah. Next question, do you see a difference in savings choosing chilled water systems over rooftop or over VRF systems?
Well, the chilled water is the most forgiving technology that we've had, and it has a lot of attributes to it that you can manipulate without changing the load. The VRF, the only issue that I've seen with it is its first cost. As far as its operation, the VRF is, in my opinion, it's as equal to, if not more efficient than chilled water. But it is a longer ROI cycle, at least my experience, of trying to retrofit a building with VRF versus chilled water. If you have HVAC traditional rooftop units, split systems, and your building can accommodate a VRF retrofit, it's a good option to look at. but it's not going to be the least expensive option, but it will be, it gives you a lot of versatility. It gives you a lot of energy savings, and it can and will impact the comfort level of the facility without a doubt.
In the last few years of my green building work, I was seeing a lot of VRF systems in the kind of highest echelon of commercial buildings, but water source heat pumps were also quite prevalent.
Well, one thing I will say,
residential towers.
The one thing I will say, Cassidy, the VRF evolved the inverter compressor technology, and that technology has now been implemented into traditional HVAC systems that aren't VRF, but you can put a variable speed air device on your system, and then you have a variable speed inverter technology compressor, either first stage or second stage, and you can accomplish a lot of the same savings now without having to go to VRF.
Well, lots of good information. Any last questions? We only have a couple more minutes. I want to mention that in the follow-up email, I will also include a survey, a brief survey. Please do fill that out. That's important for our program documentation and also my feedback. If you have any other follow-up questions or insights for me or Bob, please send those along in response to that follow-up email. So if there aren't any other questions, thank you very much, Bob. Really appreciate your insight, your thoughts, and your time. And thank you everyone on the call for joining us.
Thank you, Cassidy. I appreciate the opportunity.
All right. Y'all have a good rest of your day.